Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is what, 4:30 in the afternoon. I'm over here on the East Coast in Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia. I am popping in real quick. I had some time in between sessions. Not only did I want to get out and catch some of this sunlight and some of this breeze, but I thought, since I'm sitting out here, maybe I should check in with you guys real quick and do go over a practice question real quick. Y'all know how I do. It's always impromptu. I never, ever, ever really figure out, a good schedule and when's a good time for me to do this. But I like to kind of just pop in impromptu and try to be a blessing to whoever I can be, whoever is out there, who's ever able to check in. We can check in. And for the rest of you guys, you can catch the replay. So let's see what we got going on here today. It's a quick question. Engage me, talk back to me, write your thoughts in the comment section. Try not to move ahead of me. I guess when we work together, it makes it a little bit more proficient, and I can kind of get an idea of what your thoughts are like and wherever you are and how you're thinking, and I can be able to talk back to you. I'm actually live in this from Zoom, so I'm trying to work off of 3 different screens. So bear with me as I figure this out, because normally I'm just on Facebook Live and I just do it that way. But today I decided to come through Zoom so you guys can see me and I can try to see what's going on here with you. All right, so let's get going because I don't have a whole bunch of time, but I guess we can do this together. So let's take a look at this. A mother is seeking services for her 10-year-old daughter who appears to be struggling in school and with getting along well with her same age peers. The social worker explains the importance of getting an in-depth evaluation and assessment of the scope and nature of her daughter's behavior. In order to complete this task, the social worker will most likely, A, conduct a family session to gain their input into the matter, B, contact the school social worker to get an update on her behavior in school, C, observe her in her natural environment, which includes at home, in school, and in a community setting, or D, get an updated physical or medical report from her pediatrician. All right, so they're the 4 choices that we were given. Now, remember, one of the things that I often try to encourage everyone to do when they're reading the question is not to think outside of what has been given to you and to stay concentrated and focus on what's in front of you. Don't assume anything, don't add anything, and don't take away. What you can do is draw inferences, and drawing inferences is a whole lot different than assuming information, okay? And so the first thing that you always want to make sure that you do is you want to make sure that you read everything carefully. Now, if you haven't heard this before, you'll hear it today. This is a reading exam. And what I mean by that, it is assessing your ability to read and understand, or read and comprehend what's in front of you. And every single word counts. So you want to pay attention to the details. And if we're just reading real quick just to kind of get the gist of what is in front of us, then a lot of times what happens, we tend to miss the meat of what we need to understand. And so being able to look at the entire scenario and understanding it in its whole totality is going to help you with being able to get to the best answer choice. And the best answer choice only comes from these 4 selections. Now, keep in mind that there are multiple ways that we can always answer a question, and based on the given situation and how much information you're given will determine how you process or how you navigate through that situation and come up with a resolve. Now, being that we only have a situation here that is comprised of 2 sentences and 1 sentence, which is an instruction for 3 sentences, we don't have a lot to go off of. And so we have to base our decision off of the 4 choices that they give us. So let's try to see how we can process through this, okay? So the first step is to make sure you read everything, all of which we did, but I always recommend that you go back and reread. So let's take a look at what we got going on. We have a mother who is seeking services for her 10-year-old daughter, right? So we got a mother seeking services for her 10-year-old daughter, right? And so that seeking services, we can infer, not assume, that this is new, a new client, right? That's not an assumption. And we can draw that inference because it clearly states that mom is seeking services, right? So she's seeking services for her 10-year-old daughter. There's an age, they're specifying an age, so you want to pay attention to that. That's a descriptor. That's something that you want to see and understand and recognize that it has some relevance in the totality of what it is that you're trying to assess and understand so that you could come up with the best answer. So a mother is seeking services for her 10-year-old daughter who appears to be struggling in school and with getting along with her same age peers. So we have a 10-year-old little girl who's not doing well in school. She's struggling with getting along with her same age peers, right? And the social worker explains the importance of, so, you know, we can infer that there were some other conversations going on, but by the time we got right here, it says the social worker explains the importance of getting an in-depth evaluation, right? And an assessment of the scope and nature of her daughter's behavior. Now, here's language that I don't think we've seen too often, or, you know, too much when I'm reading, you know, when I see these different practice questions. But here what jumped out at me was the scope and nature of her daughter's behavior. So in order to complete this task, the social worker will most likely, all right, so we're looking at the scope and the nature. Scope, how big, how wide, and the nature, where does it originate from? So we're taking a holistic approach to understanding the whole child, right? And so when we're looking at the whole, you know, the scope and the nature of the behavior, you know, what is the most likely approach that we need to take to actually complete this task? All right. So let's look at the 4 choices that they've given us. Now, remember, we're only choosing from the 4 choices. I'm quite sure there are other things that we can do, but for the sake of this particular question, for the sake of trying to respond to what they're asking us, we're looking at what our issues are. All right. We have a 10-year-old girl, right? So the person that we're concerned about is the 10-year-old girl, right? And the issue, situation, or concern that we need to be focused on right now is how are we going to complete this task of getting an in-depth, right? Getting an in-depth evaluation and assessment of the scope and nature of her behavior, of the daughter's behavior. That's what we need to be concentrating on. That's what we're responding to. This is the focus of how we are to find our answer, okay? We're looking at the way we need to respond to this, the task that we need to take to actually get at understanding the scope and the nature of the 10-year-old's behavior. So what is it that we're going to do? What tasks do we need to follow? How do we operate, or how do we navigate this situation to come up with that answer? Okay. And so that's what we're looking at. So is it A? So the instruction was, I always call the last sentence the instruction, right? In order to complete the task, the social worker will most likely. So, you know, task oriented situation, right? So we got to be able to come up with the task. How are we going to understand or find out or get at, the scope and the nature of the 10-year-old's behavior? Are we going to do A, conduct a family session to gain their input into the matter? Should we contact the school social worker to get an update on her behavior in school? Or C, should we observe her in her natural environment, which includes home, school, and in the community? Or D, should we get an updated physical or medical report from her pediatrician. Now, keywords in here, right? We're looking at behavior, right? We need to understand behavior. Now, when you understand behavior management, behavior modification, and looking at, you know, augmenting a negative behavior and trying to change it to more positive, or understanding the language that the behavior is speaking, then what is it that you need to do? So I just gave you three or four different things that you need to consider when you're thinking about behavior and understanding behavior. And that's what this question is really assessing. Do you understand how to assess, how to evaluate, how to get at more or less a root, or what's the word I'm looking for? Let's stick with root. The root of the behavior, the root cause of the behavior. Do you know how to get at that? And so when we're thinking about assessing this situation, what's the best way? What's the best route? Which one of these, A, B, C, or D, should we take? So I'm gonna give you guys a minute or two, not two, but maybe a minute to go ahead and put your answer choice down. For those of you who are joining me, okay, great. And don't be afraid. This is pretty much, you know, again, how we learn. You know, we learn by sharing, we learn by talking, we learn by giving our thoughts, our rationale for why we come up with something. I see Liz put D in a question mark. So for me, I'm getting that you're not really sure, but why are you considering D? Put that down. And don't just put your answer choice, but put the reason why you're selecting that. Because what's happening here, we tend to go with a guess as opposed to going with our gut, what our gut is leading us. And so if your gut is leading you that way, give me your rationale, give me your reason behind why you believe this is the correct choice and the other ones are not. All right, here we go. Looking good, y'all. All right, keep the answers coming. Okay. Okay. So we got a variation of answer choices, and this is good. All right. Now, if we go back to the scenario, remember, the first thing that I pointed out is her age, right? We have a 10-year-old little girl, right? And we know some things about her. We know that she's not doing well in school, and we know that she's not getting along with her same age peers, right? And so because the social worker is recommended a full scope, right? The scope and nature, she's recommend an in-depth evaluation and assessment of the scope and nature. So the full scope of, you know, her behaviors. We want to look at, so what's the full scope? You know, how would we do an in-depth? How would we get at understanding how she's interacting and how she's engaging with people in all settings, right? And so if we're looking at it in that regards, and we're trying to get an understanding of her behavior in all settings, then we want to look at answer choice C, right? And answer choice C tells us that, you know, what we want to do is we want to observe her. This is kind of, you know, observing her in her environment, which includes her home. So, you know, coming into the home and just watching her in her natural environment. How is she, you know, engaging with her parents? If there's any siblings there, how is she interacting with the children that's around in her neighborhood or whatever? In school, you know, you take a day and you kind of watch how she's interacting with a teacher, how she's interacting with her peers, how she's interacting with, you know, out on the play yard. Is she sharing different things like that? And then in the community, you know, just if let's say she joins the Y, or she's in the Girl Scouts, or she goes swimming, or she's just outside in her neighborhood, just playing with the kids outside in the neighborhood, you know, just being able to sit back and just observe her interaction and how she's engaging and how she's connecting and socializing with other people in all settings, right? And so that is probably the best first step, or most likely what the social worker will do to pretty much get a good idea of the behavior that she's presenting. Does it look the same in all the other settings, you know, or is it just when she's in school she's behaving this way? And if so, then how do we, you know, transition there? What do we need to begin to look at to see why she's responding in this way in this setting and this way in that setting. And so behaviorally, when we're looking at trying to understand that language, we want to make sure we have a full, well-rounded understanding of how she interacts in this setting versus that setting versus that setting. On a personal note, I know this to be true. For those of you who do not know, I have a 10-year-old son, and he is on the spectrum, and he had behavior problems in school. And the behaviors that he was displaying in school, I have never seen, never heard of, or never even came in contact with. And so what happened was, we were trying to get at the bottom of that and trying to understand what's going on. And so to get a good handle on that, we had someone, do an in-depth evaluation and assessment. What they did, they studied him, while he was in school. They observed him, while he was at home. And they also observed him when he went out into the community and did his other activities. These are functional behavior assessments, right? We're trying to get at understanding the function of the behavior. And that's what a functional behavior assessment will do. It will check out the scope and the nature of the behavior, and it will observe the child in their natural settings, right? Whether it's in the community, the home, and in the school, because they want to get a good idea of what that behavior is. Conducting a family session to gain their input into the matter is not necessarily a bad idea, but when we want to understand the full scope, that's one piece of who she is. And so we do need that collateral information. It is a yes at some point, but it's not how we're going to get the full scope. So for the purpose of this particular question, the answer is no. B, contact the school social worker to get an update on her behavior in school. Yes, you also need that collateral information, but that's just a limited piece or a limited portion, again, of what you're going to get, because she's only going to give you information that's relevant to the school. And so getting just that information from the school is not going to give you the full scope. And so B is also a no. And then we have C, which I've already explained, which is a yes. We want to understand the function, and the way we get to understand that, we have to look at the child in all settings, right? And then there's D, get an updated physical or medical report from her pediatrician. And I'm also going to say that's not a bad idea, and it is a part of it that will also go into the report, but that is not going to give us the full scope. That's going to help us understand if there's any medical issues that we need to be concerned about that may be triggering some of the behaviors. Sometimes diabetes can look like certain things and cause us to be lethargic, cause us to be aggressive, charge us to be, a lot of different things, depressed. And so, or, if her thyroids are, messing up or whatever, I don't know, I'm just throwing out some ideas there. And so getting a physical medical report from her pediatrician, getting a full physical is not a bad idea. It is necessary, and I would highly recommend that as well. But that alone is not going to give us the full scope. So A, B, and D are not no's in terms of what needs to go into the evaluation, but is it what's going to help us with getting the full scope of what's going on. And so naturally speaking, we're going to have to observe her and start there so we can start gathering information to get an understanding of that behavior. We want to understand the function of that behavior. And so we want to start there. That's all I got, guys. I know this was really quick, but I just kind of wanted to share this with you in hopes that it would make some sense, or, kind of give you an idea how to look at stuff, how to break it down. And if you paid attention to anything that I did, I was just kind of like highlighting, and I was reading it very slowly, pulling out those pieces that I need to pay attention to. And then pulling out those pieces that I need to pay attention to was also asking myself, okay, so what's going on here, and what's being said, and, what do I need to understand in order to be able to adequately answer this question? And in doing that, I was able to derive at my answer. And so with that being said, the correct answer is C. I don't know if you guys are able to see this last page. There you go. For further further study on your own time, I always encourage you guys to do your own research, do your own follow-up. Don't just go with what people are giving you. Check the resource. Go to web links and do some research, open up your textbook, read what the literature says, do a little further studying on your own, and that will help you to gain a greater understanding. Also, make the connection. And what I mean by that, when I say make the connection, think about somebody that you know that may be, that may be kind of like similar to these situations, and think about how you would handle that situation if this client was actually in front of you. Or think about a client that you did work with and you had to, kind of creatively work through that situation. What did you do? Think about the children that we work with and those that, are quickly labeled bad. They're instantly labeled bad for some reason. And people don't really take the time out to get to understand the language that is behind the behavior. Every behavior has a language. And so it's our job to do the work. It's our job to explore. It's our job to find out what's at the root cause of all of this and make sure that we have a full understanding so that we're not inappropriately labeling people or prescribing the wrong treatment module or the treatment plan to an individual and missing what their actual need is. And so doing that, we do a disservice to our clients. And so it's really important that we have a full understanding of what it is that we're doing. You do not have to be a psychotherapist to understand behavior. You do not have to be a psychotherapist to understand, when a person is struggling with a particular diagnosis, or, because it's your responsibility to understand signs and symptoms. And when you see that, what are you going to do with that? You don't just automatically just label the person, but when you see that and you understand that there could quite possibly be, the person could quite possibly be dealing with this, then how do we manage that? How do we handle that? How do we go about, prescribing the appropriate goals and treatment plan to help that person work through whatever it is that they're dealing with? So I hope this was helpful. I hope this made sense. Sometimes for myself, I like to kind of go over things too, because it keeps me refreshed as well. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the link in the comment section for you guys, so it can make it easier for you to just hit it and kind of go to that resource and save it for yourself. You can also, like I said, do your own research, your own follow-up, and share, put that stuff in the group, share with everybody else if you find something. It could be quite helpful. For those of you who do not know, I'd be remiss if I didn't throw this in there. I do provide one-to-one tutoring services for anyone that is looking for extra tutoring support. I also have a study cohort group that runs every 6 weeks. I keep it small and intimate for a purpose and for a reason, so we can all see each other, talk to each other in dialogue, and be a really good support for one another. So it's really not about me, it's about you guys getting what it is that you need. So I like to keep it small and intimate. They fill up quickly, so if anybody is interested, we still have some seats available for, I think, August 7th, the next cohort, which is about to start, in about a month. So there are some openings there. You can always go to YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are over 30 videos there. They're all for free. Just check them out. You'll see videos much like this, and some that's just really talking about the helping process and the importance of understanding that. I pride myself on, making sure you understand that, or understanding the helping process, not just for the purpose of taking the exam, but just for the purpose of understanding the work that you do as a social worker. So that's all I got. It is 5 o'clock. I made my deadline. So I'm going to close this up, drink my water, and run on inside. You all have a great afternoon or evening wherever you are, and I'll check back in with you all again. Until then, good night.